Good afternoon, everybody. It's 2 o'clock, and so we're just gone. We will now start the meeting. So, good afternoon, and welcome to the Somerset North Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Cathy Pearce, Chair of the committee, and to my right is Councillor Matt Martin, who is Vice Chair. We'll start with the usual housekeeping. We're not expecting a fire drill today, so if the alarm goes, it's the real thing. Please make your way as quickly as possible out of those doors to your left for our guests and right for members, into reception and into King Square. There are toilets in reception, and also there is water to the side. Please help yourself if you would like any. So this is a hybrid meeting, and that means that committee members are present in Bridgewater House, and the meeting is also available online on Teams. Please note that the meeting is being recorded. Can I remind everyone in the room to please turn your mobile phones off or to silent, and those joining us online, please turn off your cameras and microphones so that the meeting isn't disturbed. I'll now introduce those taking part in the committee today. To my left are the officers from our legal and democratic teams, and to my right are the planning officers who will present the applications. And on the wings of the table are the councillors who will debate and decide the applications. The format will be as per the published agenda, and a copy of the officer reports can be found on the council website. Each application will be taken in turn. Officers will outline each application, followed by public speaking time. Only members of the public who have registered to speak can make representation, and councillors around the table will then debate and decide on each application. During the debate, there will be a proposer and a seconder for a resolution. Members will vote on the proposal, and only those members who have been present throughout the application will be able to vote. The voting options are for the officer's recommendation or against, to abstain or defer. Votes will be counted and the result announced. Before we go into the main part of the meeting, I'd just like to pay a short tribute and minute's silence for a previous member of the Sedgemoor Planning Committee, Councillor Alex Glassford, who sadly died recently. His attendance was 100%, and that's no mean feat, because I know for some of the time, especially in more recent times, he wasn't feeling well, but he died actually after quite a short illness. So in respect of Alex, I'd ask everybody to stand for a minute's silence, please. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. The main agenda. The first item is apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. I've received apologies from councillors Ferguson, Bradford, Munt and Ham.
Thank you, and there are no substitutes today. Declarations of interest. Ms. Lehman, could you take us through the usual procedure for declarations of interest, please?
Thank you, Chair. Can members show their hands where they got a declaration of interest, please? So, Councillor Filmer.
Yeah, there's a couple I was going to do. First one is item 7, which is the Edingworth Rookery Manor. I'm reported in the agenda as having commented, just to make clear that comment was made in terms of whether it would come to committee or not. It wasn't a comment on the application. And I still have an open mind on the application to be heard by us today. And the second one was item 8, which is an NRI. I realise that the speaker I know, but it's not to such an extent that it would prejudice my views, and therefore I understand I can declare an NRA, but remain within the meeting and take part in the debate and vote.
So, Councillor Grimes.
Thank you. Item 7, Rookery Manor. It's in my division, but taking no part in any discussions on it. Thank you.
Councillor Slocum.
Thank you. An NRI on application 3822 0011. Just members in the audience, they're known to me, but I've not taken any part in any discussion or any information.
Thank you. Councillor Smedley.
In reference to Bridgewater items, I'm a member of Bridgewater Town Council, they're both in my ward, but I've taken no part in any discussion. I'm not on the town planning panel either.
Which items are those? Councillor
First two. The
First two.
0019 7.
Councillor Pierce.
Thank you. Mine are the same, personal interest for agenda items 5 and 6. But as a Somerset councillor and a town councillor, but I've not taken part in any discussion or debate.
And Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Items 5 and 7, which are Mark and O3, they're both in my ward, and I've been around both of them, but I have no prejudicial interest, and I've not taken part in discussions directly concerning those.
Is there any IDB members? Okay, IDB, and that's Councillor Henry, and Councillor Phil, and Councillor Slocum.
I forgot to say I'm a member of the Bridgewater Town Council on items 2 and 3, but I've not on the planning on there. Take no discussion.
Okay, so for members of the public, where some of the members of Dual Hatted, either they are a member of the parish council or a member of the IDB, members who have said they've taken no part means that they did not hear the application at consultation stage. They are not predetermined and therefore will come to the committee with an open mind. Members who have had an NRI is where a matter arises at a meeting which affects the financial interest of themselves or their well-being, a financial interest or well-being of a relative or close associate, or of a body which is included in table 2 or which they participate with. That member can stay and vote if that effect is no greater than the effect of the majority of the inhabitants of the ward. And in this case, they're not any greater, so they can stay and vote in this application. I think I've covered all of those declarations. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, can I just clarify? Councillor Slocum, Councillor Slocum, which item did you know you were declaring an NRI for knowing an agent? Which item was it?
It was item 3822 0011, the last bit.
Yeah, that's one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is public question time, but I'll invite those who have registered to speak in turn with each application. So just sort of wait for your name to be called. So we move on to the applications before us this afternoon. Agenda item 4, the planning application regarding Ashcott has been withdrawn. So we move straight to agenda item 5 on page 27 regarding land to the east of 6 Ashley Mews, Ashley Terrace, Bridgewater. Mr. Titchener, would you like to present the report, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. So yes, this is an application for the erection of a single dwelling at land to the east of Ashley Mews in Bridgewater. So just some of the main overarching sort of considerations that we'll be taking you through in the application today, just about, very much about design, residential amenity and highways impact. So we are, just to the site is down in here, I'll do a close up in a second, but we are just to the south of the town centre and just off of the A38. So this is the application site here. So it's a leftover piece of land at the end of a relatively recently constructed terrace property here. So effectively it's a residual one with a private access that runs over the front of those units. And the proposal is effectively to continue, and I'll show this on the plans, the extension of this into this final remaining plot and to provide one 2-bedroom dwelling. So these are the plans. So here you can see the continuation. So that the property to be in here, so it's going to be 2-story to mirror the existing. There is a small single-story projection to the rear, a small area of garden to the back, and in broad form and sort of height, seeking to mimic the design and characteristics of the adjoining properties. So these are the elevations. It's, as you can see here, the front elevation, fairly sort of simple, sort of 2 up, 2 down type unit, with accommodation at first floor. So the two double-bedroom units, slight projection to the rear, just providing a little bit of additional ground floor space at the back. Windows primarily facing front and back. And just some photographs of the site. So I mentioned that recently, relatively recently constructed sort of terrace property. So that is here. So these are the existing units, and the parcel is effectively the last bit on the end around the corner. So you have this sort of private drive, which leads to, there are some existing garages which properties over here benefit from access to, and it would just be round in the corner. So it's a small brownfield plot. And if we here just see as we come around the corner, currently sort of fenced off, with a brick side, and where sort of effectively the last property currently ends. And this is sort of stood in front, sort of looking down in, so you can see this area here is where it would be located, so erected in this spot, sort of seeking to mimic the adjoining terrace. Again, inside, you can get a sense of its current dimensions and its relationship with the nearest properties. In terms of considerations, then we are within the development boundary for Bridgewater, where the principal residential development is acceptable in principle. In terms of its visual amenity, what the applicant sought to do is try to mimic the appearance in terms of design and scale and material finish, so that the of similar form to the adjoining, so enable it to tie in as much as possible. In terms of residential amenity, you can see there's a number of existing properties in and around the area. It would effectively be a continuation of that terrace or in that line. So where in the way that sort of terrace properties tend to have a mutual level of overlooking, a degree of overlooking when you look peripherally to either side. In terms of the property that's immediately to the rear, that's much further setback. There's one that's sort of directly behind, but much further setback. There are some properties with a slight offset to what would be the left-hand side. You look into the plot. Those properties are kind of turned around properties, so they don't really have rear gardens. They have much longer front gardens, so their rears are effectively a small single-story extension, and then that's it. So there's no sort of overlooking of any private rear gardens. So their private areas are more to the front, and the nearest property has bathroom windows up at first floor level. So there isn't that degree of intervisibility that we would seek to avoid. In terms of the internal size, we would consider that to be an acceptable size for the future occupants and provide adequate natural light. A condition is proposed to limit, however, the construction, just given the development nature and the number of the site and the surrounding residential uses. In terms of highway safety, so the Highway Authority were consulted and they wrote back to say they considered standing advice to apply. in the application of Stanley Price, a property of this size would need to provide one parking space. Now, there is no off-road parking space with this application. There is not the space to provide one space on the floor. So that is an element that weighs against the proposal. So this is a proposal that cannot provide off-road parking spaces. And that's something we were mindful of when deciding to make a recommendation. What we have had to take into account are other factors, the proximity of the proposal to the town centre, to local bus routes. It is a very short walk to the 838 Taunton Road, where there are bus provision. Town centre isn't far, and also the availability of on-road parking space within the wider vicinity. And our view, taking into account those factors, is that the provision of the shortfall of that one space has not led us to recommend refusal on the application, but effectively we would consider there to be sufficient capacity within the local road network to accommodate one parking space on street effectively, which would have to be on actually moved. But acknowledging the fact that that was a small element that weighed negatively in the balance when considering the application. So that's the end of the presentation, but ultimately we've come to this looking at it's a brownfield piece of land within a settlement boundary location. The design is acceptable, the amenity impacts are acceptable, but the shortfall is the lack of parking that's dedicated for this one unit. But we weighed that against the sustainable benefits of the proposal, and we would consider overall the balance to be acceptable, and that's why we're recommending approval in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kitchener. We have one speaker on this application, and that is James Fenton, who is agent for the application. If you'd like to come forward. Good afternoon. Let me know when you're ready, and then we'll set the timer for 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Afternoon, councillors. Thank you for your time today. I hear as the proposal has received an objection from the Town Council on grounds relating to the ownership of the access road primarily. As the case officer stated in her report, this is a civil matter rather than a planning consideration. However, evidence has been provided for legal ownership. The legal situation is that the applicant owns a section of the track, the neighbours own another section, and within the legal documentation, each has a legal reciprocal, I suppose, right of access to ensure that everyone who joins it can use it. This matter aside, the statutory consultees, including the case officer and indeed highways, are happy with the proposal. From the plans, it can be seen that this will be a natural extension to the existing adjoining terrace. Despite neighbour concerns relating to overshadowing, not really quite sure how this could be the case due to the orientation and positioning of the proposal. As I say, it's a natural extension of the existing terrace. It's located within a sustainable location within Bridgewater, within 1 minute walking distance of the local shops at the end of Ashley Avenue, and also within very close proximity of the local bus service from Bridgewater to Taunton. As Mr. Titchener alluded to, there was questions over the lack of parking with the proposal. On that basis, we had a report commissioned by a professional highways consultant who concluded, in essence, pretty much along the lines of what Mr. Titchener said, that due to its proximity to local services, the availability of on-road parking elsewhere very close by, the proposal would be acceptable on balance. So other than the Town Council objection, there have been no further statutory consultee concerns raised. The proposal provides accommodation which exceeds national space standards and equally provides generous outside amenity space in terms of garden area. We respectfully request therefore that members follow the officer's recommendation. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Benton. Thank you. Any comment? Councillor Smedley.
I'm a bit concerned about the description of sufficient capacity in the local road network in that area. Ashley Avenue was just mentioned, that's one of the most overpopulated streets in town in terms of cars. Hampton, multiple occupation, and they're constant victim of fly parking. Ashley Terrace is a small street off that, so this is an adjunct of that. To me, it's a worry about overdevelopment, and there certainly isn't. I don't think sufficient capacity for extra parking. I'd like someone to convince me otherwise.
Thank you. Would you like to respond to that?
I mean, the things we have to take into account are the parking standards set by the parking strategy with our optimal standards, and that's what highways say. So there will always be cases where they can't be achieved. And I do note that, you know, Ashley Avenue, certainly there's certainly on-street pressure very much in Ashley Avenue, which this one isn't on. This is on the adjoining sort of street behind. You know, and I think there's certainly greater pressure, say, on Ashley Avenue than on this one. I mean, we have to be sort of mindful of the level of shortfall. I mean, we're talking about a shortfall of one parking space here, and is the addition of one parking space on the local highway network, when balancing it out against all the other factors, going to be sufficient to say this should be refused because it's going to lead to such an unacceptable impact. You know, so I think if we were talking about significantly more shortfall, a much bigger property that's going to lead to the need for many more spaces, you know, certainly I would take that point. And I think it's noted that the adjoining properties are in a similar sort of position. You know, we are saying, you know, they don't benefit from dedicated provision. You know, so how is this being that different? And I think in our view, we have to say it's a balancing exercise, as a lot of these things are when we don't get everything that we would like on this scheme, but we are having to balance the brownfield use of the site, a fairly rundown sort of leftover plot of land, its central location, the proximity that you can walk to town in relatively quick time. There are bus services, and yes, acknowledge the shortfall, but say it's one space. In our view, we don't think that would necessarily stand up at appeal. The shortfall of one parking space when you consider what the context.
Thank you. Councillor Fillmore.
I wonder if Mr. Titchener could show us the photographs again of the site. I wasn't sure whether there was, yeah,
That one?
yes. So how does that, the cars that we can currently see, where are they in relation to the site at the moment?
They're inside at the moment, so I think the next, so this is looking over, so they've managed to get in there through the fence, which is currently there, you know, blocking the event. So that is effectively used as a bit of a storage area, I gather up to now, and with a left-over side.
So that was following on from Councillor Spendley's query about parking. We're one parking space short for the new dwelling, but the new dwelling is in effect removing two parking spaces that are currently being utilised.
I wouldn't say that these are parking spaces that are in active, constant use for the residents, because it's fenced off at the moment. So you wouldn't be able to readily get in and out on a regular basis. So I think we are only talking about one space. We're not talking about the loss of two spaces as well as in our view.
Okay, and the other question I was going to ask is, in terms of the conditions, is there any reason why we haven't conditioned sort of bat, bird, bead bricks and those which are normal with?
And you're very right to bring that up. Actually, I meant to mention that in my presentation. We should have put a condition on about enhancements, and if members were minded to approve, yes, if we have a standing condition, we can impose about that.
Thank you.
Councillor Hendry.
Thank you, Chair. A few points there. The cars that are there at the moment probably have no legal right to be there, and they're only using the space because it's there. Maybe more than that, I'm sure. Could be right, could be wrong, but okay. If the people who want to build a house, they only have one car, just let's say, for example, they live locally to that area, waiting to build a new house, then I'm just saying, if you, then one more car wouldn't make the slightest bit of difference, because it's kind of in the vicinity, and even if it's not, it's one vehicle wouldn't make that much difference just to that parking in that area. I find that difficult to believe. The access road itself, has been pointed out by the case officer, everybody there has a legal route because you all want a little park or something like that on those lines. So the actual access is not a problem, and the parking isn't really a problem. It's only one vehicle. On the balance of probabilities, when that house, if that house was actually built there, it would blend in so well that nobody would even really notice it wasn't there in the first place. I'm not quite sure why the town council would actually make a big fuss about this and would vote against it, because I generally cannot see a problem at this stage in time. If it was built there, it's a continuation of what's there already, would blend in, parking's not a problem, and access is not a problem. So as we sit here at this moment looking at it, I'm okay with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smedley.
Well, I'm not a supporter of the my one little wrapper won't do any harm theory. I think if you start letting this sort of rule go by and by, you end up with a, overdevelopment is what is the case at the moment. It's backland development. It's ever diminishing narrower road network as you go further away from the already overcrowded Ashley Avenue to the very small Ashley Terrace, where a car is probably longer than each house, and big backland off that would make this even worse. I think it's a case of overdevelopment. Clearly, it's lack of access, proper access around there. The parking's not adequate. I would propose that we object on those grounds.
Is that a formal proposal?
Yeah.
So Chairman, the proposal is to refuse the planning permission on those planning grounds, which the planning officer will outline for clarity.
Yes, we need to be clear on the grounds that you are planning, proposing an objection. To refuse, sorry. You mentioned overdevelopment.
Just looking at the slide on the screen there, I think it's all two elements of what Councillor Smedley is suggesting there. Firstly, I think it's the lack of parking, but also overdevelopment. I think looking at the overdevelopment argument in line of what has been approved next to this site, it certainly sort of very much does follow that. I think that's just not something that's been a lot of debate on the level of development. I just maybe sort of consider that. In terms of parking, there, as the previous slide has shown, there is parking taking place there. Now, I understand, although I wouldn't like to be quoted on this, but I think it is being used by someone who doesn't live locally at the moment for parking. But there are some parking spaces there at the moment. They're clearly photographed show those. Now, whether the loss of those is a harm that weighs against this development, or whether it is the fact that this development doesn't have its own parking space, is that the harm that you identify? I think you need to be sort of reasonably clear on that. And as Dean has pointed out, we do allow development, car-free development in central Bridgwater. If anywhere in the district, where else would it possibly be allowable? Are you saying that this is so far outside the centre of Bridgwater that it's not reasonable to allow it here, given the distances that we've sort of highlighted in the report? It's not possible that all these brownfield sites would come forward with parking. Sometimes they don't. Anyone buying it would know that it's going to be very difficult to own a car here, so it might provide an opportunity for someone who's happy to live car free. So just those are why we have the optimum standards. They're not set in stone. If we feel that the circumstances of an individual application are such that car-free occupation is a reasonable and realistic prospect given the location, then we don't normally identify a harm. But I think just need to articulate that this, in your view, is the wrong location for car-free ownership.
Mr. Smedley, have you anything else to say to sort of further express your reasons or policies in terms of your proposal for refusal? It's around overdevelopment, I heard you say, and impact on parking. We just need to be really clear.
Overdevelopment, lack of access, and the over-expectation of a lack of parking in that area. If you say people are going to think they may not need to park in it, well, that's not the evidence so far from all the other people that moved into the area expecting to park in the area. I think there's clear overdevelopment, clear backland development that area, and I wouldn't like to be supporting any further development, potentially increases that.
So, I'm not sure who was first. I don't, councillor Slocum first.
Thank you. I have to say, it is a very small area, there's no doubt about it. But, in the age of us climate change, wanting people to walk, it's certainly very near to the vicinity of the town. There's no doubt about that. But I presume, and maybe we shouldn't presume that when you buy a property, you'd be able to park somewhere. I think the issue here is that you've got a house, there's a 3-bedroom house, am I right? Two bedroom. And you can't park, kind of makes you feel, but I do take Mr. Noon's point that not everywhere expects to park. But I just would like to have a further clarification about what the highways have stated about the parking here. Could you just give me some clear definition about that, please?
So highways will refer certain small scale applications to what they call standing advice. So that's a pre-written document that says certain standards that should be applied, and it applies certain parking standards. So those parking standards are that dwellings in this location of this many bedrooms should provide one parking space, but it acknowledges that that is an optimum level, and site-specific circumstances will have to be taken into account. So that's the advice that we've had from the Highway Authority on the application, and that's what we've had to judge the relative merits of it, and acknowledge that there is a shortfall, but we are taking into account other factors, in coming to the recommendation before members today about its location, about it being brownfield site, it being in Bridgewater, and being, all other regards, it's sustainable development.
Madam Chairman, could I just say, the thing that with the photograph, you showed 2 cars parking there. Could you go back to that photograph, please? The other one with the 2 cars.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Those 2 cars were parking there. You don't think they're local people. What worries me is, are we just exacerbating a further problem that everywhere's got at the moment? There's no doubt about it. I can understand the need for a home. I'm absolutely wonderful. And I think why they never developed the whole lot in the first place. Wonders, was it for this reason? I don't know why they just left that space and didn't finish it. But it is a bit of a, but you just explained there isn't an actual mandatory need to have car parking. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes, we don't apply minimum standards anymore. Those have long since gone. So we have an optimal standard that we seek to achieve. And on most schemes, we're able to achieve an optimal standard, but there will always be exceptions when we can. And just in terms of why the scheme they didn't build out over this plot, we wondered about that. And we tried looking back through the planning history, and the best we could find was reference to some historic concern that may have been in a previous flood designation part of the site, but the maps don't reflect that. So we're not necessarily any the wiser, but it did seem like it was a certain question that was hanging over us. We were like, why have we been left with this one leftover plot at the end, when naturally it would seem to take the terrace out to the end? So it remained unresolved, but it's certainly something that we tried to look into and work out if there was a specific reason.
Thank you. Councillor Grimes.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it's been difficult, but I accept the parking issue. It is a crowded area, but it is, as the officer said, a balancing act. And I think on balance, it seems to have ticked the boxes with the planning. So in that case, I'm going to propose that we accept the officer's recommendation on this. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Grimes, can I say, is that with the additional condition?
Sorry, yes, it is.
Can I take advice? Oh, sorry. Councillor Hendry.
I'm quite happy to second, sorry.
Thank you.
I'm quite happy to second Councillor Grimes on that. No hesitation at all. Thank you.
Can I seek advice? We've had a proposal for refusal, which came first, but no seconder as yet. Oh, Councillor Bruce.
Sorry, I was waiting to be asked whether there was a second or not for this. I am concerned that we're taking away 2 parking spaces that are already being used and not providing another one. And I think in an ideal world, car-free living would be wonderful, but we've got to be honest, that doesn't happen. And it's a 2-bedroom house. There's going to be 1, possibly 2 cars for the people living there. And so I'm happy to second Councillor Smedley's proposal.
Thank you, Councillor. Now, just say before we go any further, as ward councillor, it certainly is a sustainable location. There are bus stops nearby. It's fairly close to the town centre, but the space is so tight there. And I share concerns about the fact cars are already parking now. We don't know if they're local or they're not, but it is such a densely populated, the streets around there are so densely populated. It is a concern. But so we have 2 proposals, 2 seconders. Can I seek advice on how I proceed, please?
I think that because the seconder came in after the first, after the recommendation to write was proposed and seconded first, we could take the vote on that one first, and then if that one falls, we will look at the vote on the second one. If that one is granted, then the vote on the second one falls away.
So we vote on the proposal to grant the officer's recommendations first. Okay, thank you. So with additional conditions.
I don't agree with that because when Councillor Smedley's proposal was made, no request was made if there was a seconder. So that's why nobody spoke up earlier. I think the first proposal is Councillor Smedley's.
Advice, please.
We will leave it to the discretion of the chair.
Thank you. In which case, as Councillor Smedley was the first to make a proposal, we will take Councillor Smedley's proposal for refusal, seconded by Councillor Bruce. Thank you.
If we're going to take that one first, are we able to just clarify the reasons for refusal, just so that as officers we're clear, because we will obviously have to write them if it comes to it. There's certainly 2 elements. There's the overdevelopment. You consider that the extent, the scale of proposal is overdevelopment in regard to the character and appearance of the area. Is that? Okay. And the second point was about the lack of parking, and that would lead to unacceptable levels of competition for spaces within the local highway network. The other point you mentioned about lack of access, but I'm not sure that's particularly relevant. I just wanted to clarify that point because there is no vehicular access proposed as part of this. So people will be able to get to their properties. I just wonder if that is a necessary part of it, because I don't think that would be very easy for officers to particularly explain in a reason for refusal. I just wonder whether the other 2 points capture what are your concerns.
Yes, they do.
Thank you.
Thank you. So all those in favour of refusal, please show.
That's 1, 2, 3 for refusal.
So we have 3 for refusal, so and against.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 against. So that motion fails.
Thank you. That has failed. So we go to the proposal by Councillor Grimes, seconded by Councillor Hendry, to accept the officer's recommendation to approve with the additional condition regarding bat bird boxes and biodiversity measures. So all those in favour, please show.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in favour.
6 in favour, and all those against, please show. 3. Thank you. Both carried to accept the officer's recommendation. Thank you. So now we move to agenda item 6, which is on page 33 of your agenda. And this is regarding change of use of dwelling to form an 8-number bedroom HMO in Bridgewater.
Chairman, before we carry on, I believe Councillor Slocum has another declaration.
Sorry, that's always in it. I need to declare an NRI on 0823 00307 as the speaker is known to me. But I have shared no information, nothing at all, no meeting, nothing.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Slocum. So we're going to the next agenda item, Mr. Evans, if you'd like to take us through, please, the report.
Thank you, Chair. This application related to 52 North Street, which is a mid-terrace property located on the edge of the town centre here in Bridgewater. Just before we go to the report, there's a couple of updates I'd like to make. Members may have known that may have noticed the description of the application is actually incorrect in terms of, sorry, the description is correct. The actual contents of the report in terms of the reference to the number of occupants being 7 is incorrect. My apologies for that. The actual application is for the occupation of the property for 8 persons with a HMO. That's the change of use we're looking at today. And as a result, there's just an update on the screen there in terms of the update to the proposed condition 3, just to make sure that we get the number of people right. And also, just for avoidance of doubt, that the internal subdivision we're referring to is not preventing what is approved or what is recommended for approval on the submitted floor plans. So we did want to make that clear at the outset in terms of where we are with the proposal of this recommendation. So the application site is located at 52 North Street, which is located here. We're just outside the town centre. Just out of the picture here will be the new cinema and the council offices where we are today. This is Pennell Loo, and you have the town centre and the shops and facilities located further east. So the application site is considered to be within a sustainable location. It's currently a 5-bedroom property, residential use, and the proposal is to convert that property into an 8-person HMO. The works will be mainly internal. There'll be no physical alteration to the external appearance of the building, so there'll be no impact in terms of the street scene or visual amenity in the surrounding area. The works internally will revolve around the either reallocation of accommodation within the property, mainly the living room and dining area of the ground floor, to provide a couple of extra bedrooms, and the bedroom here at first floor level to create an additional bedroom there. In reference to town council's comments, there were concerns raised over the amount of amenities within the building. In terms of what's being proposed, all but one of the bedrooms will be provided with an ensuite bathroom. There will also be a communal shower and toilet facility for all occupants to use. And at the rear, on the ground floor level, there will be a communal kitchen and dining area within the property at the back there. In terms of the standards set by the strategic housing team, the allocation of space in terms of floor area is in accordance with their minimum standards. So it's considered that the amenities of potential occupants of this property would be met, and they would not be subject to substandard living accommodation as a result. So this is the property from the front elevation from North Street. And this is the garage to the rear. So the second concern raised by the town council was over the lack of storage space for the property in terms of bins and refuge. This is to be retained as part of the proposal to provide that storage space. So the garage itself will have the potential to provide 1 parking space that is both currently, as well as providing secure and bin and refuge collections. This is the access to that garage. So the existing property already has a ready-made vehicular access from the highway network, and this will not change. This will be available for the users of that property. This is the view within Camden Road, which is the adjacent highway. And as you can see, the parking, like on the previous application, is quite restricted in terms of the general area. However, it is considered on the basis of the change of use that the demand for parking would not be significantly increased over that which could be generated by the existing property, or that generated by change of use under permitted development rights, which allows for up to 6 people to occupy a single property without the need for planning permission. So in terms of the key issues, it's considered the proposal itself will not have a significant impact on the surrounding area because of its sustainable location. There are no external changes, so the street scene and the amenity of nearby properties will not be affected by the change of use. The existing garage and storage area to the back of the property will be retained, so to provide enough secure cycle storage to encourage sustainable travel. And as I said, there will be no impact on residential amenity either through overlooking or overshadowing. So the recommendation is to grant consent, subject to the amended condition that was highlighted at the beginning of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Evans. We have one speaker for this application, and that is Lyndon Brett, Agents. If you'd like to come forward, please, and let me know when you're ready to start, and we'll start the 3-minute timer.
Chair and committee members, I'd like to thank the case officer for his update and recommendation for permission. The town is facing a woeful shortage in terms of accommodation, as I predicted over 10 years ago now, with the situation still compounded across all levels of rental demand, impacted by demand from HBC. This property is ideally placed being opposite the pick-up and drop-off point for work-based bus transport, so meets all sustainability arguments, also being town centre accessible on foot for all amenities. The only reason this application is before you is that the Bridgewater Town Council have objected on the grounds of overdevelopment and lack of storage for refuse and recycling. They also feel that there is insufficient internal communal space. This is a consistent theme of their approach, which is very frustrating because yet again it is made with no basis as to fact, either in terms of plan interpretation or this council's own guidance. Somerset Council's HMO standards dictate minimum room sizes and minimum levels of amenity space for HMOs with an occupancy of up to 10 people. 7 of the bedrooms are clearly shown as being of sufficient size to support double beds, to indicate spatial awareness rather than targeted occupancy levels, which are restricted to 8 as per officer's updated report. This document states an HMO with 7 to 10 occupants should have a kitchen area of at least 11 metres squared and a total communal living space of 27.5 metres squared. The proposed design includes a kitchen area of 19.65 metres squared and a total communal living space of 32.9 metres squared. The kitchen facilities and communal living space are more than the required provision, exceeding by a margin of over 36%. Furthermore, communal spaces proposed comprise of 2 large rooms adjacent to each other, which in my opinion provide a better layout than a series of small rooms across the building, which can arise in some constrained HMO consents. This property also includes both front and rear gardens, which I believe should be taken into consideration when assessing shared communal areas. The proposals also include a large existing garage, which provides ample storage for cycle store, refuse and recycling, meeting sustainability on all fronts. The proposals do not include extending or significantly altering the existing building. As demonstrated above, sufficient shared communal space has been provided, and therefore it is difficult to justify why this should be overdevelopment, as the proposals are for the change of use of an existing structure rather than form a new development. I trust that on this basis, the application can be approved by this council. Thank you.
Mr Brett. Members, any comments? Councillor Smedley.
It's also frustrating, I guess, for town councillors to constantly be faced by an increase in housing multiple occupation, putting more and more people into smaller sites with more pressure on the residential neighbourhoods. It's quite true that this site is opposite an access bus point for entry point workers, for instance, who may well want to move into that house and leave their cars in Camden or Blackledge, which is already one of the most overpopulated streets for cars. Town centre workers park there. There's no parking scheme in place at the moment. Residents are 50-50 whether they want residential parking there. I think I would agree with what the town council says about this, and I think we should be objecting to this on the grounds of overdevelopment and parking.
Is that a formal proposal?
That's a proposal. Can I call for a seconder?
Yes. So we need to, again, be absolutely clear on the reasons before we proceed, and I will ask if there's a seconder. So overdevelopment and lack of parking. Is there a seconder for refusal? Okay. Any other members for debate, please? Thank you. Councillor Hendry. And, oh, sorry.
Who seconded it?
Nobody has.
Oh, sorry, beg your pardon.
Councillor Hendry first, Councillor Bolt.
No, I need to declare something, please.
Oh, okay, councillor Slocum.
Sorry, apologies. I just need to declare that I sit on the Somerset Nuclear Energy Group that looks at workforce. So I just wanted to declare that. Okay, I know nothing about this, just wanted to declare it. Okay.
Okay,
To err on the side of caution, I think the legal advice is to declare an NRI.
right,
Yeah,
yeah,
I know, yeah.
thank you. Councillor Hendry and then councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, no, sorry, no councillor Bolt.
You see, what's the big dilemma with this? It's a change of use, is that correct? It's a
Yes.
change of use. They're not changing the footprint in any way. Ecology is not a problem. Highways is not a problem. Most people, just as a point of reference, who work at Hinkley Point tend to leave their cars, and very often their car park's actually down at the site and they use the parking right. It's the same with Birmingham Sea and Highbridge. So although they could stay there, I have to assume it's for Hinkley Point, but I don't really know that for sure. But they wouldn't even need to park their cars in Bridgewater Town. They actually park them down at Hinkley Point, actually like paid parking right. Anyway, going back to the building itself, as it's only a change of use, and we just stated there's no change in footprint, ecology, overshadowing, absolutely nothing like that whatsoever. I don't really see the problem. And on that basis, I have to propose acceptance to go with the officer's recommendation to the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Hendry. Is there a seconder for? Ms. Lehman,
With amended conditions, please. sorry.
with amended condition 3, sorry, thank you. So councillor Bolt, is that seconding that recommendation?
Yes, quite happily with the amended conditions.
Okay. Councillor Slocum.
Thank you. I have to say, what councillor Hendry said, about the parking of, if only that were true. The problem we've got is that, we don't know what this is for. We don't know. There is a bad need in Bridgewater for 1-bedroom homes, a desperate need for 1-bedroom homes, and for various reasons. So the need is great. The facility, the property is perfect for that. But there is some concern that there could be 7 cars brought here. 7 cars. Now, you know, I have to say, depending, even if it was private ownership, private people living together, I would doubt very much if they didn't come in a car. And the worry is that Camden Road and Alexandra Road and all around there, Healthy Road, is absolutely chocker. And I know that's not a condition, and I know you say that's not a reason, and I guess it's not, but that is a bit of a worry, but the property itself is obviously perfect for the need. So I'm in a slight dilemma, really. And again, did Highways give anything that we can go on? Did Highways say anything?
We were given the standing advice response, so effectively deferring it to planning officers to determine. You know, yeah, like we did in the previous application, if we are looking at car-free development, or in this case, 1 parking space for the amount of accommodation, both existing and proposed, you know, this is the location to have that because of its proximity to the town centre. People going there will know they're not guaranteed to have a parking space, so they could potentially live car-free in this respect. You know, I think it's an ideal place for someone to do that, but obviously there'll be a degree of decision-making on the part of the occupants for that. Obviously, if they come fully aware that they haven't got a parking space guaranteed with a car, then that could potentially cause issues, but I think we have to hold our hands up and say that we're being fairly transparent about this.
Can I come back, Jim?
Yes.
I just wanted to say that obviously if it was, it's a difficult dilemma because if it is for the workforce, the buses outside, they would hopefully park their cars out on site and then get the bus, which is right out there, opposite side of the road as well. So that does meet the need, I get that. But it is just a little bit of a worry, but it is a perfect accommodation, I understand that.
Thank you. Councillor Filmer.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, as others have said, I mean, we know that there is a need for this sort of accommodation across Bridgewater and Sedgemoor, single units. It is an existing 5-bed dwelling, so it's a substantial property already. In terms of overdevelopment, I think we're going to struggle, bearing in mind we're not changing the outside of the building at all. That is, you might argue about density of the accommodation within it, but I mean, in terms of overdevelopment, I can't see how we can claim that. and there's a 5-bed dwelling, we don't know how many cars could turn up to that with a family with teenagers and whatever, so you could have a lot of vehicles, so I don't see that we've got the grounds to object to this as it stands at the moment, and if you're going to put it anywhere, that seems like a very sound site to utilise, so I would not be objecting to this one.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. A question really rather than a statement. I've been looking over the documents on this and I may well have missed it, so excuse me if I have, but I can see the number of rooms that are specified, but I don't actually think this is a planning concern, but is there any specification on the number of people?
So yes, the condition 3 that we've recommended would limit the amount of people to 8 as is being proposed here, because we feel that in terms of fallback position, yes, there is a 5-bedroom dwelling here. Potentially, it could be occupied as a 6-bed HMO without the need for planning permission, because that can be dealt with as a permitted development proposal. So in this case, because of the amount of accommodation being proposed, it's felt essential to restrict that accommodation or control that accommodation to be an 8-person bedroom HMO, because if we're looking at anything increasing above that, then we may have to reevaluate the impacts that would occur from that. So we feel it's acceptable as 8.
Yeah, that's 8 bedrooms, but
We've positioned it for 8 people.
right, okay.
Sorry, yeah. So if I go back to the slide with the position on, so this would be the updated condition, to condition 3. So it's for 8 persons, not 8 bedrooms. So that's what we're dealing with as a HMO. It's the number of people that are occupying the accommodation that requires planning consent rather than the number of bedrooms.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, members, so we have a proposer and a seconder to accept the officer's recommendation to approve with an amended condition 3, which limits the numbers up to 8 persons. All those in favour, please show.
5, 6, 7, 8 in favour.
And those against.
1.
Thank you.
Is carried.
So that is carried. Thank you very much. So we now move on to agenda item 7 regarding Rookery Manor. And that's on page 39 of your agendas. Now, Mr. Noon, are you taking this application?
I am, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. My update was going to be, Councillor Filmer has said, his comments were made in relation to the scheme of delegation when we refer applications to chair and vice chair, in the event that the recommendation is contrary to the officer, the recommendation is contrary to the parish council, which was in this instance. Those comments were made in relation to that referral process, not the application itself. Just wanted to underline that, and shouldn't have been reported in the officer's report as they were. That was an error on our part, which I apologise to Councillor Filmer. So the application is it's retrospective. It's for the retention of a single-storey extension on the south side of these converted buildings. So there, under the yellow star, are the building concerns. You can see the M5 motorway on the right-hand side of the screen. The complex around here, formerly a wedding venue, now a mix of various sort of tourism issues. And then there's the west, I think that's up towards west, up going that way. So there, these are the 2 buildings. They were formerly part of the tourism uses or hotel type uses, converted to 3 apartments a couple of years ago. Those were originally going to be holiday lets. They then had the holiday occupancy removed from there by condition. So they do exist as 3 little dwellings now. There are 2 in the northern part, 1 in the southern part. So the purposes of the application, the red line just around the site, an area for parking and sort of a modest amount of amenity space. There's the building. You can just see this is the extension here, and it's got a fenced area around it, and there's some parking just outside. just in slightly clearer detail. So we can see the extension has already been built, and I have some photographs coming up. Just in terms of the drawings that have been provided, there is the extension, the little flat roof bit on the end. It's outside, just on the end of this single story bit with a lantern light in the middle of the roof. Just the internal floor plans, just to show, you know, it sort of adds on an area of sort of space for the occupier of this unit. Just looking into the site, two-story bit, single-story bit, that's our unit. And within the fenced area at the back there, you can just about see here the flat roof. And then just from the other side, there it is there, you can just about see the lantern roof just on top of it. So very modest, if any, impact on the outside world visually. There it is within the site, just materials to match, detailing to match, flat roof. Just going as a design feature of this one. Just to the west there, you sort of see how there's a bit of bundling, bit of landscaping, so it drops in behind that. And then courtesy, these photographs, courtesy of the applicant, don't quite know how they took this one, maybe the drone was involved, but just to give you an idea of how this sits on the end of the building. So in terms of the key issues, no objection in principle to the extension of an existing dwelling. It's a little apartment. The parking, as you show on previous drawing, there's adequate parking within the site. This doesn't affect, not adding any bedrooms, doesn't increase the parking demand, but just really reflecting concerns that have been raised, just showing that parking can be provided. The design is felt in keeping with what is there in terms of residential amenity. It impacts on no one apart from the host dwelling. And whilst it is a retrospective application, which is always regrettable, that simple fact does have no bearing on the planning merits, and the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Noon. We have a speaker on this item, and that is Kevin Bray, Parish Councillor, speaking against. Mr. Bray, if you'd like to let me know when you're ready, and we'll start the timer for 3 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much, Chair and Committee. The PC have recorded their concerns regarding this application insofar as the definition of occupation status is still unclear. Point 1. Point 2, it's in flood zone 3, and as such, the flood prevention plan put forward seeks refuge for the 2 ground floor apartments in the first floor apartment. That has no legal status when these are sold. That cannot be carried forward. And then thirdly, there's no associated parking. The area at the back is still part of the hotel site, not designated as parking for these if they are residential or if they're still holiday let. If we track back, the original application 2410-00025 was for the conversion of a garage and a store to hotel bedrooms. That was approved with a condition 2 stating it was for hotel use only and not for independent use. There was no mention of flood prevention and there was no parking. The application then 2420-0004 was for change of use of the hotel bedrooms and housekeeper's apartment to 3 apartments. This was approved with condition 3 placed on it, stating it was for holiday use only. Application then 2420-0034 was for the removal of condition 3, and that was approved, stating it could have all year round occupation, but not stating it wasn't for holiday use. It also had a condition 4 put on it, stated that parking need to be defined. And here we are now 3 years later, and parking is still not defined as associated with that. It's also worth knowing that for the last 3 years, that apartment has been let by Host Seasons and is still being let by Host Seasons on their website, albeit that it now has for sale notices outside. This application still fails to define whether it's a holiday let with 12 months approval for occupation, or it is now a residential property that can be sold. In addition, no car parking has been allocated outside of the hotel boundary for these properties, and we know that they will require at least 3 parking spaces plus visitors parking spaces, say 6. Finally, They are being sold as residential apartments for private use. So it needs to be clear, because when talking to the agents, they can give you no information whatsoever about ground rents or occupation standards. It seems to the PC that it is still a very muddly application. It has been over the past 13 years. All we're seeking is clarification and approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nim, would you like to respond to the questions raised there, please?
But firstly, this application is for an extension. It's submitted through the householder regime. It does not seek the change of use. It merely adds this extension to the existing unit. The existing unit has planning permission originally 2020 for change of use to 3 apartments. That had a condition on it that limited the occupation. Holiday letting, whatever. That condition was removed by second application in 2020. And that allows it to be occupied as a dwelling. There are no restrictions on that application. There may be some clumsy wording in the description of development, but unless it is specifically forbidden by by a condition, in this instance, it's allowed. So it is a dwelling in having looked at the planning history. The red line we have around this now, and I would need to check whether that is consistent with the red line that was previously thrown around this. But assuming it was, that was the red line that was drawn when the 3 apartments were created. That's the red line area that has been approved as residential ancillary to these 3 units. There is parking shown within that. I think that addresses that point. So I think I am satisfied that we're dealing with what we think we're dealing with, which is namely an extension of existing residential unit. If we're not, it's a matter to be investigated through enforcement. But I've looked at this in great detail. I can't see an argument to say that this is unauthorised in any way. Even if it were, there's no harm identified in a holiday let having this extension added to it. So it's acceptable whether it's a dwelling or a holiday let. And if there's some loose planning history in the background, we will investigate that and take whatever action is needed. But I think you are safe to determine this application as presented to you. If there's a doubt in your mind, think to yourself, is this acceptable for a holiday let? Why would it be unacceptable for a holiday let if that's what the planning history tells us? But equally, I think it's acceptable for either. But I'm also convinced that this is a dwelling anyway. So I think the question is academic, given the planning history.
Thank you. Mr. Nim, there's a question about the parking.
So the parking for the purpose of this application, sorry, not too far there, is shown just at the southern end here, which is in the red line that we have for the application as a whole. I have no reason to doubt that that is not deliverable as part, within the application site. This application is not for an additional dwelling. It doesn't affect the amount of parking required by the previous permissions. So it is essentially an academic point for this particular application, which is just simply looking to add additional floor space. Sorry, go back there as such there. It's dotted there. It's annotated oddly on these drawings as future extension. That's what we're looking at here today. So I think it's been recycled some plans around the agent has here, but it is just a simple extension on the end of the property. It doesn't, in my opinion, change the parking requirements for the dwelling, which would have been dealt with at the previous stage.
Thank you. Can you just put the photograph back, please, which shows the sort of orientation of the extension in relation to the rest of the property and the position on the road as you pass? I think you passed it just.
That's looking back the other way from the bottom of the site, and the road's at the far end there, and that's sort of stood. That's the glimpse you get as you go past, looking back a bit at yourself to see the roof of the extension.
So it's positioned away from the road that runs past the manor. Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Slocum.
Mr. Mann, please forgive me, I may have missed this, I'm sorry. You know how I hate retrospective. I know you said it makes no difference to the application, but it does to me. Why is this retrospective? Why did they feel they could carry on? Please.
Comes back to the second planning permission that we granted where we lifted condition 3 of the original permission, lifted the holiday occupancy restriction. At that point, because it became a dwelling, we added a condition to remove permitted development rights for extensions. And I think they missed that. This would normally be permitted development for a property such as this. That is my charitable explanation of it. I wouldn't want to venture an opinion beyond that. Normally this would be permitted development, but they assumed they had their permitted development rights intact.
Madam Chairman, through you, was there no checks and balances? Does there nobody checks this at all? I mean, you know, on the building level, under building control, nobody would go and check that at all.
No, we can't. We don't expect our building control officers to be planning experts to provide that sort of advice. This was picked up on through enforcement, and an application has been made to recognise.
Councillor Fillmore.
Thank you. And I think those members who've been on this committee for a while will know this site. And I think the officers have been quite charitable. We've seen planning application by salami slice, and I can understand the frustration for the parish council in terms of what is understood to be happening here and what isn't, because as you've heard from the officer's explanation, whether these are residential, whether these are holiday, seems to be not exactly 100% certain. The wording on applications, I think, was described as clumsy, and I think that's been a history of applications. And one wonders sometimes whether it's deliberately clumsy, because then we end up in these sort of situations we're in now. With the report, it talks about the parking spaces that we're going to put on an informative to advise them that the parking spaces should be there. I wonder whether we can ensure that there's something a little bit stronger than that, because otherwise we're likely to be back here in a couple of months or years' time looking at something else that's happened on there because it wasn't quite clear at the time, because the applicant hadn't understood what they were and weren't allowed to do. The difficulty we've got this application is it is for a relatively minor extension with limited impact because of the location that it's in. But as I say, I totally understand and agree with the frustration the parish council has had with this site, because Edingworth is a very small rural hamlet with a few dwellings and farms, and this wedding venue that emanated out of a previous farm, which now appears to be turning into a town rather than what was holiday accommodation. And when we have units that mysteriously move from being holiday into residential, it doesn't help engender any confidence in the local community that other items that I won't get into detail of, but are certainly under investigation by our enforcement team, aren't going to mysteriously turn that way as well. So I think we have no option other than to grant permission for this. But I think, as the parish said, what they want is some clarity going forward as to exactly what we're granting permission for. And so that both ourselves as local residents and parishes and the applicant know what it is they've got, so that they don't think they've got permitted development to do other things that they might suddenly end up doing on this building as well.
Thank you, Councillor Fillmore. Did you like to respond to those points?
If I could just go by, but hopefully try and assure members that we are dealing with what I say we're dealing with. The permission that removed what was the holiday let occupancy condition is described as removal of condition 3 of planning permission, yada, 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 to allow for year-round occupation. Year-round occupation is not really a planning phrase I'm comfortable with, but whether that's holiday use or permanent residential use, year-round occupation, you couldn't use the words year-round occupation to try and distinguish between holiday or permanent residential. That's the fact, I think a simple fact. In terms of the other conditions that were imposed on that, so this is the permission I'm regarding as the one that creates these as dwellings. There was a removal of permitted development rights for extensions, which I think is what tripped the applicant up. Didn't realise that had been put on. Parking shall be made available for each of these units prior to first occupation. I think we may have a concern about a breach from the parish council, but that condition is there. We can see where it can be provided here. We can chase that up and make sure, through enforcement, that the parking has been provided. In terms of another issue that was raised by the parish council is prior to first occupation of the ground floor units, in accordance with the consent, access to the upper floor safe refuge area shall be provided. Now, I do accept the reservations from the parish council about the fact that these are not in this part of the building. They are somewhere you'd have to leave this building, go outside, knock on the door of your neighbours, and somehow get in and go into the upstairs bit. I fully appreciate the dissatisfaction with that. However, that was agreed as part of that previous application. The Environment Agency do these days allow for that as a means of safe. We're seeing it on other applications elsewhere. Some sort of communal refuge area is being accepted. So that has been dealt with there. Yes, I appreciate that the description of development referring to apartments that can be occupied all year round is clumsy, but I think the upshot of that is that it is a dwelling.
Councillor Filmer, you wanted to come back.
Yeah, and the comment that Mr. Noon has just made has filled me with dread, because we as a planning authority moved away from limiting to certain times of the year for holiday use. And we made it, people could use it all year round, as long as they then had a register kept that people could be seen that that wasn't their main dwelling. So we have got numerous holiday accommodations which have that very condition to say you can be in there 12 months of the year. That does not make it a residence. And if we're now saying if we're giving 12-month occupancy, that's a residence, I am really worried, because across the district, we have got similar properties which we've been doing left, right and centre. All the new holiday ones are not limited to an 11-month usage. They are 12 months of the year usage, but we've always argued it's not 12 months of the year by the same person as a resident. Also, in terms of the flood risk, at the time when that condition was put on, those units were expected to be holiday units and in the same ownership of the people who were running it as a holiday site. So there was a prospect that your holidaymakers could take refuge in another holiday let, whereas now it's a residence that is someone, you're saying it's someone's house. That's a very different beast. So this one still fills me full of an awful lot of dread as to what we are potentially setting as a precedent here.
Just to try and reassure Councillor Filmer on this one, the condition that they applied to remove, and it was removed, not substituted with any other condition, said the occupation hereby permitted shall be occupied for holiday purposes only, and shall be occupied as a person, and shall not be occupied as a person's sole or main residence. The applicant, the successor entitled, shall maintain a comprehensive up-to-date register listing occupiers. That already allowed year-round occupation there was no restriction in terms of what times of year you could do it. So it had already been allowed holiday occupancy all year round. So it was a modern condition. By removing that condition, we removed the holiday occupancy, not the year-round element, because the year-round element was always there. It's clumsy wording on that description, I think, has led us up this part of discussion. It is unequivocally a dwelling when you look at what's happened in the planning history here. I hear loud and clear that we probably should have revisited that refuge point, because what was acceptable for holiday use, probably less than ideal for residential use. Unfortunately, that's water under the bridge now. Well, yeah. Apologies for the phrase.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Councillor Hendry.
Thank you, Chair. We are fundamentally only talking about this extension here, is that right? Am I right in saying that? Really, that's the bottom line here. Under normal conditions, today as we sit here, that would really come under PD. Okay? But at this moment in time, yes, there's been conditions, something like that. I get all that, but actually it would have come under PD, wouldn't it? Am I right in saying that too?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, it's okay. All right. So given what it is, and the existing buildings are already there, and we are, as justified in talking about the extension, really, and nothing more about who's staying where and how long for. Floodstone Street, okay, you can have flooding any time of the year. You can read the newspapers every single week, there's been flooding somewhere, even here in the UK. So we can't just say because of flooding, that's a reason to actually turn this down. There is no technical reason actually I can think of to actually say no to this. It'd be very, very difficult to give a reason. So if you go back and say, no, we can't. It'd be very, very difficult. So I don't see a technical reason. Again, just to.
It looks like ships. The laminate floors.
What's that mean?
No. Is the owl.
Hold on a minute, let's see.
I've
Somebody's
not
just
gone into
joined.
William's voice for a minute.
No, carry on.
Oh, okay, all right. Anyway, what's I going to say? Worded clumsy, okay, a few people pointed that out, and yes, it could be, but technically, it's this had to be granted permission, and I don't see how you can refuse it. So from this point sat here just now, I recommend we grant permission. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Hendry. Councillor Martin is to speak, but do we have a seconder for councillor Hendry's proposal to accept the officer's recommendation to grant permission?
Yeah, sorry. Before you move to that, can I just ask the last question?
We can still take questions after a seconder, but councillor Martin is sort of asked, and you will be next. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Bolt, thank you.
Thank you. Looking at this purely as the extension, I'm not happy at all about the fact that you could end up with that being sold to two people in the first story who don't live there, and how are they saying, but that's not what's on the table here. That's already been, as you say, is water under the bridge. What we're looking at is the extension, which would have been permitted development, rightly or wrongly. It's been missed, but it's been picked up by enforcement. So that's what we're voting on.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm torn on this. What should be a rather everyday application is turned into something quite interesting because of the somewhat flaccid application details and the building that's already taken place. I can see absolutely the point from my colleagues, the fact that under normal circumstances this would be PD, and that it doesn't really have an effect on the grand scheme of things in the district. I can also see the other side in the history of the building itself, and I think with it having been PD, the worry from my point of view is that this could lead to sort of development by 1,000 cuts, whereby it's just a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, and none of them really make a big difference. But overall, as somebody said, over this side, we suddenly got a village there. And also, to lend weight to Councillor Slocum's comment on pre-existing developments, you know, a mistake was made and this was put up expecting it to be PD. How many times does that happen before, you know, we can keep letting stuff go? And we know we're not in a position to punish people, and that's not my thing anyway, but we have to have a line drawn somewhere. As Councillor Hendry said, I can't see a technical reason to refuse this application. And if it were a normal application, it would just go by because it's only an extension. But I feel there are so many complications on this because it has just been a little bit here and a little bit there. So yeah, although I couldn't, you know, I don't have the history either of Councillor Filmer of knowing the area explicitly, but it just doesn't sit right. I can't think of a reason to object to it. It's just irritating on a number of levels, and I think we just need to keep an eye on these sorts of things. We need to be aware of this going on because it makes the whole thing messy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Councillor Bruce.
Thank you. Just can't understand why were the rights to permitted development removed on the previous application?
It's not entirely clear. It's not explained in the report. Yeah. It's a fact that it's there. It's probably a condition that shouldn't have been imposed, because it wasn't on the original commission that created the holiday lets in the first place. They'd applied to remove the holiday restriction condition, which we agreed to, and then hit them out of the blue with a condition to take away permitted development rights. I can't explain why that happened. It's not good practice. We probably shouldn't have done it, but equally the condition wasn't challenged. The permission, that condition now stands, and that's what's created this. I think being charitable is what's created this situation. In terms of other things that are going on at this site, it is a large site. There is all the former wedding venue and bits and bobs stuff. It's a site that we are very familiar with. My enforcement officer is scowling at me from the back of the room because I'm about to promise that she's going to do quite a bit out here. But we are keeping an eye on this. The parish council do tell us what is going on here. There are a number of people who tell us what's going on here, and we will keep an eye on this one. It's unfortunate that all this has come up on what, as a number of people have said, it is in any other circumstances, a very straightforward matter. But I think that's probably where we go with this one from here is we got applications in and pending on a number of things here, and we will look at things with wide open eyes on everything. And I think that's probably the best I can offer at this point. And obviously the parish can bring us comments directly in terms of what they see going on.
Thank you. Councillor Slocum and then Councillor Grimes.
Okay, I think just to make this clarify, Mr. Moon, you've had a charitable head on, so maybe this is why you are being more charitable. So to be absolutely clear, are you actually saying that maybe some of the issues weren't done properly through, I'm not going to say your fault, anyone's fault, but perhaps were not done clearly in the beginning? And this is why this applicant was confused and maybe didn't do it the right way, didn't get all the ducks in order? Is that really why it is? Because if that is the case, to put clarity to this, that makes it a lot easier. Because at the moment I'm feeling retrospective, I'm feeling this applicant's just done what they wanted to do, da-di-da-di-da. But actually, if we can clearly define that maybe this was an error, you know, things happen, and then it'll make the decision easier.
I think with the debate we've had around the table today, quite clear, talking these things through, how the previous permissions were described and the processes that it went through. Yes, with the benefit of hindsight, yes, things could have been a lot clearer. And I have no evidence that the applicant set out deliberately to flout anything. I remain of the view that they proceeded with what they regarded to be a permitted development extension, not realising that a condition had been put on at the same time as we removed the condition that we've been asked to.
Thank you, that's really helpful, thank you.
Yeah, I think we can't presume or assume anything in making our decision. The application as is before us, which has been explained, and each application is taken on its own merits or otherwise. So just, we do need to bear that in mind. Councillor Grimes.
Thank you, Chairman. I can't see an issue with granting permission on this the way it is, but I think going back, part of the problems with this site over the years, we've had too many loose ends, and every time we've had a planning application, we've had more loose ends. And the problem is these loose ends never get tied up. And I would like to see in the real world these tied up before any more permission is granted, because we've had this, to my knowledge, probably 3 or 4 applications where there's so many loose ends, it's just not true. You could keep tripping over them. Nobody ties these loose ends up. And here we are again, in the same position as we've been back probably years now, with different applications. And I think this is what riles everybody and what riles the parish councils, is that these loose ends, oh yeah, we've got some loose ends, tie the damn things up, because I'm fed up with these loose ends that are never tied up, and we go on and we'll be back here again, I guess, in time to come, and there'll still be loose ends. But like I said, I can't see a planning reason to turn this application down. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. One more speaker and then we will go to the vote. I think we've given this a good airing. Councillor Hendry.
One very final word on this, because I was one who actually proposed to grant permission here. with all these things, every planning application that comes before us, regardless of what's on that site, we deal with what's on the table on the day. Nothing else. There is nothing else regarding that site that comes to the front here. All we are deciding is what's there on the screen on front of us right now. Nothing else. I said grant permission. I stand by that. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, we have a proposal from Councillor Hendry to accept the officer's recommendation to grant permission, seconded by Councillor Bolt. All those in favour, please show.
And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in favour.
And those against? Any abstentions?
1, 2. There's nine members here. 1, 2.
Yeah, I put my hand.
Oh, sorry, 3. 3 abstentions.
Okay, so that is carried. Thank you. So we'll now move on to the next application, agenda item 8 on page 45. Mr. Titchener, can you present the application for us, please?
Thank you, Chair. So this is the application at property called Orchard Cottage on the Causeway in Mark. It's an outline plan permission with all matters reserved for the erection of 2 dwellings. It's got a range of policies and considerations that need to be taken into account, including the principal development, flood risk, visual amenity, residential amenity, and highway safety. So this is Mark. Everyone knows it's a very long, thin village. So this is the causeway. The application site is just at the eastern end of this part of the causeway. This is quite sort of tightly sort of clustered part of the causeway, much more sporadic sort of development in between. Then you've got sort of a more nucleated part of the settlement over here with some other services and facilities. This is the application site here. So it connects as an existing access onto Mark Causeway, which itself is a B road. So it's an existing field gate here. But the proposal also within the sort of quite large land that's associated with this property here, which is Orchard Cottage, which is Grade 2 listed. So the application seeks outline consent for the erection of 2 dwellings. So all matters are reserved. So we're only really looking at the principal. So this plan which has been provided, which shows a possible layout of 2 dwellings, is completely indicative and not necessarily indicative of the form of development that we would want to see come forward as part of an application. So I encourage members to just disregard these sort of layouts shown on the plan that's been provided. Ultimately, it's the land within the red line that's being consented and scheme to 2. So just some photographs of the site. So view looking along the causeway to the east. So that shows the existing field access in here, and there you see in more close-up sort of detail the field access viewing from the west. And then photographs within the site. So the land's currently part of the garden. This view is taken from the northwest. More photographs within the site, so you can see some of the boundaries, some trees within the site, which I'll come on to in a second, and some sort of garden buildings, and then established sort of tree boundary along the eastern side, and then you've got more to the south, more open countryside, and then again just some of the gardens and structures that are within the application site. And again, that tree boundary which sort of separates the site from the property further to the east. So I just want to come on briefly. We did receive one late representation, which came in over the weekend. So I just need to update members on that. So that was from the adjoining neighbour in the property to the east. That was a property called Wainbridge. So they'd stated that they'd recently purchased their dwelling, and their reason for its purchase was its immediate environment, positive aesthetic. But they did raise an issue that we do need to give some consideration to, and that they stated their daughter was autistic. and benefits from this area of the ground. So their property is on the eastern side of their plot, their garden's on the western side of the plot, and that is on the side of the bit that joins the application side. So, and they stated that part of their grounds, their garden, is part of their therapeutic care. And they know that the light, breeze, and natural surroundings are a key part of this area, which they can consider to be ruined by the development. Now, this is an issue that's been raised, and we do have obligations under the Equalities Act and the public sector, so-called the Public Sector Equality Duty, that confirms that local planning authorities must have due regard to protected characteristics, and these should be taken into account when determining planning applications. So this is something that we need to be mindful of. So there are, I believe, 9 protected characteristics, of which disability is one. You know, autism is a learning disability. You know, would be included under the remit of the Act. So there is a potential that the impact of development upon a protected characteristic, and that is a material consideration that we have to take into account. Now, there was only limited information provided within the representation about specific harms to the protected characteristic that could arise. Actually, I've summarised the main points that they've already said within the previous slide. And I'll come back onto the plans in due course. But proposed dwellings are to be located on a plot which is about 47 metres from the rear of the adjoining property. So that gives you a sense of the size of the garden of the adjoining property. And the separation of the proposals. And as I said, the neighbouring property benefits from a generously sized rear garden, which is separated from the development side by that boundary of mature trees. So I showed in those slides those mature trees that were on the eastern boundary, and those trees, as I understand it, are in the ownership of the neighbour, not of the applicant. So it is within their remit to retain them to provide a level of screening from the proposal. That notwithstanding, the application is an outline, so we don't have detailed designs of the dwellings at the moment. But there's no reason to consider that dwellings of appropriate height, scale, and massing, that have an acceptable relationship with the neighbouring properties, can be achieved. That would be a matter for a subsequent reserved matters application. But we have no information, given the size of the proposal with separation from the neighbouring plot, that a satisfactory relationship could be achieved. And as such, there would only be the minimal impacts on that protected characteristic. So those concerns that were made should be given some weight, but they need to be weighed in the overall planning balance when looking at the relative merits of the scheme. There are other material issues raised in that submission, which are unrelated to protected characteristics. They're about access onto a busy road, reduction in open natural space, loss of light, noise pollution, light pollution, and air pollution. So those are material issues, and we'll touch on some of those in due course. They also state the proposal is only for profit, but that's not a material consideration that we should be giving it, that should be taken into account. So drawing back onto the main considerations we would have to look at in this application. So about the principle of development. So we are talking about a proposal which is coming forward outside of the settlement boundaries. So Mark is a tier 3 settlement in our local plan, but this is just outside. It's about 150 metres outside the settlement boundary. So Mark's slightly unusual. There's 2 settlement boundaries. There's a settlement boundary around the western element. There's not a settlement boundary around the section in the middle, where it's much more dispersed back development. And then the nuclear part to the east has its own settlement boundary. So we're about 150 metres to the east side of the west part. And I'll come back to a plan because that'll be helpful in setting out that point. But we have policies in the local plan that allow well-related self-builds to the settlement boundary. So, the scale and the nature of development in this case is what we would consider to be well-related to the settlement boundary, because if we're talking about a very linear part of the causeway, where there's existing development to the north, east, and southern and western sides of the proposal, and this would effectively be a continuation of that. In terms of character and form, and therefore we would be considered that it would be in conformity with policy D9. We know that there is a residual need for people on the self-build register with a local connection to the village of Mark, which is a requirement of the policy. And if I'm just able to show this map, so this shows the settlement boundary. So that this line here is the settlement boundary around Mark. So as I said, this half of Mark has a settlement boundary. The application site is here. So you can see the separation distance. I said it's about 150 metres, and you can see that relationship that it has. So we would consider this reasonably well rated, both in distance and in terms of the form of the development, because actually there is existing development both on the north. That's the caravan park on the north side, and then you've got the existing dwelling here. You've got the other dwelling here. You've got other buildings here. You can see that there's a scale of zone in around there, and so in that it is our conclusion that we would consider it to be reasonably well rated for the purposes of the policy. In terms of other considerations, so there is the site is crossed by an area of higher flood risk, but that doesn't cover the entirety of the site. There's an element that crosses the site. So when this arises in terms of self-build proposals, we are able to grant permission on the basis that there's a specific locational need, because the specific locational need is the fact that there is someone with a local connection to Mark. It can only live within Mark. That's where they're seeking to do, which is an area generally of higher flood risk. And in that sense, the sequential test would be passed. Resilience measures would be dealt with at reserve matter stage, and the IDB have given standing advice. The one thing I would suggest that we would condition, and that isn't included in the report, is given that there is the areas flood zone 3, we should have conditioned that the proposal needs to have a second floor place of refuge, because that's not in the report at the moment. In terms of residential amenity, we are looking at application with all matters reserved, so we don't have the exact details, but there is, as I mentioned, adequate distance from the neighbouring property. So from the property boundary to the neighbour to the east is about 47 metres, far in excess of standard separation distances, good distance to the host dwelling. So there's no reason to consider that we can't get an acceptable relationship with nearby properties. In terms of visual amenity and historic assets, the visual appearance is not part of this application, would need to be considered at reserve matter stage. So the plot sizes are in keeping with the surrounding built environment. The conservation officer has given their views on the scheme and isn't raising any objections. They feel that an acceptable scheme with regard to the adjoining listing building can be achieved. The detailed considerations of what's appropriate will be very much part of the reserve matters application. What does it look like? Is it an appropriate design that sits well with the adjoining listed building? Which is why I said maybe disregard those plans that were shown on the block plan, which perhaps would not be the most appropriate. In terms of highway safety, standing advice was again applied. So access is a reserve matter, so we're not looking specifically at the details of access as part of this application. What we do know is that there is an existing access there onto Mark Causeway, and there is there's sufficient frontage on the site to deliver appropriate visibility space. So whilst we're not looking at access as part of this application, but we are confident that appropriate visibility space can be achieved when the actual reserve matters application comes in. And then just on to ecology. So part of the site is covered by a designation as a traditional orchard, and this is something that's come up on the previous application. Some members will recall. So that's a very high level designation that Natural England had done based on aerial mapping. So the applicants were asked to do a certain amount of surveying, and that has highlighted that there are 3 trees which remain, 3 apple trees within the site. Now they are said to be of relatively poor quality. The county ecologists have recommended conditions that those trees and hedgerows are retained, so we can retain sort of planting features at least for sort of 5 years following permission. I suspect that the lifespan of those traditional trees isn't going to be significant, but that condition would also secure additional planting and mitigation. So overall, they didn't feel the need to raise an objection on that basis. And so in conclusion, we would consider that the self-build policies do support the proposal. I do appreciate that all matters are reserved, so are principled. And there are a number of conditions proposed in addition to the one I mentioned about sort of the flood risk first floor place of refuge. But overall, our recommendation is to grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Titchener. We have one speaker on this application, and that is Mrs. Emma Watts, the applicant. If you'd like to take a seat, please. And let me know when you'd like to start, and we'll start with 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, council members. Firstly, I'm unable to speak on the late representation as it was a surprise to me. My name is Emma Watts. I'm an applicant and owner of the site at Orchard Cottage. The application site is an infill plot less than 150 metres from Mark Causeway settlement boundary. It is located outside the residential curtilage of Orchard Cottage and to the east of the existing site. There is existing development on 3 sides. The preparation of this application has followed in-depth discussions and site visits with Conservation Officer Mark Lidster to ensure that the proposal will not adversely affect the Grade 2 listed Orchard Cottage. Mr. Lidster has confirmed that he has no objection in principle to 2 dwellings on this site. The application is for outline consent with all matters reserved. The Conservation Officer has indicated that he would support single-storey agricultural style design for each dwelling, which would reflect local traditional farm buildings and retain visibility with prominent buildings. Local Plan Policy D9 supports small-scale self-build projects that are outside of but well related to the existing identified settlement. Somerset Council have confirmed there is a current need for 6 plots. This proposal, which is less than 150 metres from the settlement boundary, will help meet that need, allowing local people the opportunity to design and build their own homes. Further details of this will be at the reserved matters stage. As I have mentioned, the Conservation Officer has confirmed that the illustrative scheme of the barn-style dwellings would be likely to be acceptable. As such, while this application is for outline consent with all matters reserved for later approval, it is considered that the proposal does accord with Local Plan Policy D9, and this is the conclusion that was reached by the Planning Officer when recommending approval of this application. When preparing this application, I commissioned an ecology survey of the site, which confirmed that 3 apple trees of poor quality remain on the site. This application seeks to retain these trees, and this will be secured via recommendation planning condition 4. In addition to this, a further number of ecological mitigation and enhancement measures will be secured via planning conditions 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 to ensure the biodiversity is protected and enhanced. I welcome members' consideration of this proposal. This is a valuable opportunity to provide 2 plots for people to build their own homes on an infill site that is well related to the settlement. Thank you very much for your time, committee.
Thank you. Members, any comments? It's just like that.
I would just, and I thank the speaker because I think she really gave a good précis there. That was really well done. And thank her for that because, yeah, that really explained a lot. There's a few questions I was going to ask and she's done that. A little bit concerned about the neighbour with the autistic child, which we all know that's a big thing for people to have to deal with. But I'm sure neighbour to neighbour that can be sorted as this is only in principle. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hendry.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. This particular plot of land is the kind of thing that it won't stay vacant forevermore in perpetuity. It won't. So whether it's built on this week, 6 months' time, next year, the year after, this will be built on, and we all know that in here. Well, I assume you can see that yourself. It's, as pointed out already, so I don't have to go through all the technicalities. It's an infill, but that's what it is. It's an outline planning stage. I'm not quite sure why the PC have come in against this and said I'm against it. I just don't get that at all. As it stands here, I'm absolutely in favour of this. I've gone through the paperwork before I come in here, as I always do. As I said, I'm not going to go technical about this because I'm not. I propose we grant permission. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hendry. Councillor Filmer. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Filmer. Just let me jump in. I did think I'd probably the bit about the single story first of all, I think I should explain because the speaker referenced the comments of the Conservation Officer saying he would appreciate a single story proposal on the side. Obviously, as often as he's coming with his specific heritage focus, we as planning officers have to balance a range of competing planning interests, and one of them will be flood risk. So there will be a need to sort of balance up the various issues. Notwithstanding that, we still remain of the view that, you know, the reserve matters scheme will be able to balance those matters appropriately. And there are different ways to do that. You can, if height is a concern, you know, you can bring the height down of this two-story property in various different ways. So I remain convinced that even with the condition that we propose that there would need to be a first floor place of refuge, we can still adequately meet the conservation officer's concerns about appropriate design for the site, and they would be very much involved in those discussions at that time.
Thank you for that explanation. Councillor Filmer.
Yeah, again, as Councillor Henderson, I have no issue with the recommendation that the officers have made, and we're happy to support that. Just a bit of clarity, because I do think I understand why the parish was concerned, because obviously it is outside the boundary. And I think from the report, we're saying it's about 150 metres outside the boundary. So I'm just looking for clarification from Mr. Tishner and Mr. Noon that in effect what we're saying is as long as something is within 150 metres of a settlement boundary, but we're happy that that is well related, because I can recollect in other areas that we've sometimes had distances considerably less than that. As I say, in this particular instance, I have no problem with the recommendation, but I would just like that clarification. And again, in terms of the flood risk, the comments have been made because the bulk of the area that's in the boundary is in flood zone 3, therefore we've passed the sequential test. This isn't in that boundary, but we're still saying it passes the test. So I think just on those two technical things, I'd like the explanation, just so we know for future applications we're dealing with, we know which way we're jumping. But as I say, in terms of the recommendation, I'm happy to support the recommendation.
So in terms of the separation distance, 150 metres, well, I mean, the test is that it's well related, and well related is, there are a number of factors, and distance isn't the only factor, you know, so it's very much in the terms of spatially, is it well related, the form of the settlement. So here we have a very linear form, we're continuing that linear form, one element of well related. Proximity is another element of well related. I wouldn't want the interpretation to only fall on the fact that it's down to distance alone, because there are a number of factors that officers will have to take into account when determining that. In terms of your point about flood risk, yes, you would have to balance up whether there are areas of lower flood risk. Mark is very much one of our most low-lying settlements. So actually, with very limited opportunities to put residential development in areas outside of some of land at low flood risk, we have to weigh that up. But in some circumstances, when you apply the sequential test, you apply it on a much wider sort of area than you would here. But self-build is about meeting local needs, and so it's not at this tier, that when we're down to sort of tiers 3 and 4. So actually, you cannot throw the net as wide as you would in other circumstances. That's why we say in this circumstances, development of an area of higher flood risk is acceptable as part of undertaking that test.
Thank you.
Thank you. So doesn't appear to be any more speaker. Oh, Councillor Slocum.
I'd just like to second the recommendation, please.
It's already been done.
Oh, apologies. I must have said it for a moment.
Clarity, Councillor Filmer.
I'm sorry, I didn't realise that.
Seconded. Can I just get some assurance or explanation? Are we wise to include another condition around any subsequent detailed application, including first floor refuge space? Is that necessary?
So my suggestion is we put condition on because of that, and that will very much guide the expectation about what comes in the reserve matters, because we would want to secure that, you know, because it's in the interest of flood risk. I'd rather we put that expectation up front, so that someone knew what the expectations were when they're designing their scheme, rather than design the reserve matters and come in and then we go, you got to start again. So it's better it's flagged.
Thank you.
I would just a slight caveat to that is just to require a flood refuge to be included in the details submitted at reserve matter stage without specifying how high it must be, because there will be a tension between height and relationship with the conservation area. Conservation issues. We do see flood refuge areas agreed on other developments that aren't actually in first floor. So it doesn't have to be at first floor. So just keep our cards open, options open.
Thank you. Councillor Hendry, Councillor Filmer, are you happy for me to agree with the officer's exact wording on that? Okay, so proposer and secretary to grant the officer's recommendation to approve with that added condition about flood refuge space. All those in favour, please show.
That's.
Oh,
That's
sorry. Those against? Any abstentions? One abstention. Okay, thank you, members. Can I suggest we take a 5-minute comfort break?
Yeah.
And be back as near to 4 o'clock as possible, please. Okay, thank you, members. I think everybody is back now, so we'll continue the meeting. And we're on agenda item 9 on page 57. And Mr. Evans will take us through the application for West Newton, please.
Thank you, Chair. This application is a change of use of land to extend the existing garden area forward to Manor Cottage in West Newton. It's also the erection of a garage and store building to the north of that property. So the application site is located here with the adjoining field, which is owned by the applicant. The property is a semi-detached property located here, and the change of use would occur immediately adjacent to the existing residential curtilage. This is the location plan. So we have the property here, the 2 properties of Manor Cottages, and then the red line area indicates the area of land that would change use to residential curtilage. Existing land also has an access, vehicular access to the northwest corner there, which is directly opposite another access into the opposite field. So this is the proposed layout plan for the site. The existing access would be utilised, and then there will be a grass green sail web type of access from that point on along the newly formed east boundary of the garden area, which would be lined with fencing and a native species hedgerow. This would lead to a hardcore gravel parking area here, which would serve the proposed storage and garage building here. So this is the proposed design of the garage. So we have sort of 2 bays, carport there with a ground floor storage area that's accessed by a pedestrian door there. And on the side, we would have an external staircase leading to a door into the roof space, which would also be used for domestic storage. The building itself will be clad in timber with a clay tile roof. So we will be looking back from the existing vehicular access towards Manor Cottages, and the location of the garage will be approximately in this area here, with a track formed along the east boundary, which again will be lined with a hedgerow on that side. This existing hedgerow would be retained to enclose the site from view of the highway. The application is before members today as an objection has been received from North Pemberton Town Council. They felt that the application site, while a small portion of the existing agricultural field will be occupied by the change of use of land, it's not considered that this would be wholly inappropriate in an area where there are large areas of garden allocated for existing properties within the vicinity of this proposed site. So again, this is just the same sort of view, really looking back southwards towards the rear elevations of the existing properties there. And this is the view taken from the vehicle access point. And as you can see on the right hand side, we have quite a densely planted hedgerow, which is really developed pretty much from view of the highway itself. In terms of other issues that have been raised, it's not considered that the ancillary use of the building for storage and car parking would have an adverse impact on residential amenity in the locality. The building itself is a sufficient distance from all properties locally, so as not to cause any overshadowing or overlooking issues. The nearest property on the opposite side of the road, where there may be concerns raised by there were concerns raised by a resident within the course of the application consultation process. However, in terms of overlooking, this would only be possible from the external staircase door, but as it stands with the proposal, this would be approximately 35 metres away from the nearest residential property. And given the use of the building for ancillary storage, it's not considered there will be any adverse impact through noise or disturbance in that respect. The design and scale of the building is considered to be appropriate for its intended use as an ancillary function to the existing residential property. And the choice of materials are considered appropriate for the countryside character of the area. So the application is subject to The application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions listed on page 61 of the report. As you will know, condition 3 of the conditions listed does seek to restrict the use of the building to that used for the domestic purposes of 2 manor cottages and the occupants of that property. And also highlight condition 5 of the list of conditions as well, which requires the building not to be brought into use until the fencing and planting shown on the submitted plan is implemented. We feel confident that we can see development that's appropriate for the surroundings, and the change of use of land itself would not have an adverse impact on any existing property or the wider area. So, as I said, the recommendation is to grant consent.
Thank you, Mr Evans. We do have a speaker on this item, James Leafield, agent. To come forward and let me know when you're ready to start, and we'll start with 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. On behalf of my client, we would like to erect a new garage carport which consists of 2 vehicle parking spaces, an implement store and a store above. This application also requests the change of use of part of the field to domestic curtilage. My clients currently utilise the front south drive, which cannot be accommodating for turning or parking. Therefore, the field, they find themselves reversing into the road. For the safety of their young family, the proposal would satisfy this main issue. The building has been designed in the traditional manner with an oak frame style oak frame style building, timber cladding with a reclaimed tiled roof. This type of structure is typical in design and vernacular within the locality. The proposal will utilise an existing access into the field, with the first 5 metres of the access being consolidated with a 2-wheel track formed with cell web with gravel infill to reduce domestication, which is what I agreed with Liam throughout the application. A small pedestrian access gate from the garaging and rear drive area will access the main property. We have introduced a new native species hedge to be planted to the east and north, which is a biodiversity enhancement and also formation of screening. We have worked closely with Liam to come up with a suitable scheme that meets policy, design, and addresses my clients' concerns around their young family safety and day-to-day practicality. I do hope this information is helpful and hope you can also support the officer's recommendation for approval.
Thank you very much. Dana, can we just check if that is somebody online?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Members, Councillor Slocum.
I think this is very self-explanatory. I think the report gives out the detail. I'm very happy. The ward councillors seem to be very happy, so I'd like to move the recommendation, please.
Thank you, Councillor Slocum. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Hendry first, I think, to speak, then Councillor Filmer.
Quite happy to second that, John.
Thank you. Councillor Filmer?
Yeah, happy again with the applicant. Just a couple of questions, if I could. Is there any reason why we again haven't put something on relating to biodiversity in terms of bees, bats, boxes, and bricks? And the other question was, you talked about overlooking, and that's from the staircase. Would there be any merit in removing development rights would there be any PD rights on this because it's associated with the domestic dwelling for windows to go in at a later stage? Because often in the past we've taken that right away so that we don't get overlooking coming at a later stage.
This condition 4 is removing permitted development rights from the land. Arguably not necessarily, because it's not part of the curtilage, but as we found out earlier today, sometimes these things are missed. So I think the condition is perfectly reasonable there. In terms of biodiversity enhancements, we do have that native species hedge, as the agent referred to. If members felt we needed to go more than that, then the only option really would be to incorporate something on here, which is the timber structure of this nature is probably limited opportunities. Swifts and swallows probably find their way in if they want to anyway. But if members felt that was important, we could add that condition.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else wants to speak, so we have councillor Slocum proposing, seconded by councillor Hendry, to grant permission as per the officer's recommendation. Would you like to see the additional conditions around bird back boxes, ecology? No. No.
I'm not that I don't care.
No.
I do care, but I think the applicant has met with the hedging, and I think everything else, I think they've done quite a lot there, so I'm satisfied.
That's all right. So the recommendations are as per on the agenda. Those in favour, please show.
25, 6 and 8.
And against.
Against.
And that's everybody, isn't it? So no abstentions. Okay, so that's carried. Thank you. So we will now move on to the final application for this afternoon, which is agenda item 10 on page 63, regarding the application at O3, which has come back from last month's committee. So, Mr. Noon, are you presenting this one? Okay,
Yeah,
thank
just
you.
bring it up. Sorry, thank you. This is an application that was considered a previous committee when it was deferred to enable a drawing that had sort of suggested how a footpath access, the pavement basically, from the site to the edge of the settlement could be provided. That was went out to reconsultation. The only response to consultation I have had on that is from the Highway Authority, so I chased that up because obviously that is the crucial one. They are maintaining their objection on both grounds as per their previous position. Specifically with regard to the footway, they note that whilst the proposal to introduce a footway is welcomed, the proposed footway does not connect to other footways within the village. It would also require crossing the A361 at an angle rather than straight across to reach a safe point of refuse, which is pavement on the other side, measured at 22 metres between the 2 points. I've got a photograph that hopefully illustrates that. The A361 is used by HGV traffic as well as one of the main routes between Taunton and Street, Glastonbury and Wells. Any crossing point which is not direct from one side of the road to another is not supported. So welcome the provision of the footpath, but because it doesn't actually link up with other footpaths and will require people to cross the road, they maintain their objection. So in my report, third reason for refusal, I have said possible to, that is maintained. So we are looking at 3 reasons for refusal. To quickly go through the presentation, hopefully, just to remind members, this is the site, north side of O3 on the west side of the road within that circle. In more detail, approximately equating to that red square, you can see the road opposite it going down south east towards Aller. So we're right at that junction, opposite that little farmstead on the other side of the road. Just looking there, in purposes of the application, it did require an amendment, which has been out for reconsultation. The red line, a bit faint on this, apologies, but does now include this verge area across the adjoining site. That's where this footpath will be provided up until this point here at this, what is in fact an access through to sort of agricultural stuff to the rear. So that's the site as it exists, and in a field entrance opposite as New Inn Farm there, that's where the new access would be created. Indicatively, we have a layout that is not part of this application, it's for information, but the point of access would be agreed if members were minded to approve. There is also then the footpath shown down across the adjoining site, which has in part of it, immediately adjacent to the built-up area, there is a house that's been approved and is now constructed. I've just got a next slide, just zooms in a little bit there, so you can see how this footpath, which would be on highways land, we've done the necessary notifications through the application, but that is highways verge that this footpath could be delivered upon to this point here, the southern end. Just looking at some photographs, stood at the field entrance with the camera turned south. So you can see the red brick house with the panels on it. That's the new house on the adjoining site. Looking across the field to the rear, as you can see, the site's currently used really for equestrian grazing, and swinging the camera to the north. So it's a level site, just laid to sort of rough grass. On the opposite side of the road, so I'm on, within the junction of the Aller Road, looking back across to the field entrance. And then stood at that entrance looking south, you can see there's the speed camera at the junction. And then there's the built up bit of the village just in the far distance there down the road. But looking still in the existing entrance looking north, that's Newhouse Farm there. And then just stood looking south across the junction, so you can see at the back of the silver car, that's where the entrance to the site. South. And then just going down, stood under the speed camera there, you can see the house that's been approved and is built there. And then with the footpath would be on that verge opposite, coming up just to a point about here. Back more detail. This courtesy of Google Earth Street View, to serve two illustrations really. One, the footpath ends at this little brick wall, well, on this part here of this grass, and then there's this little brick wall here, that so people would either have to go round that or cross over. And this is the issue that the highways officer has. The footpath is at the front of that lorry on the opposite side of the road. So you have about a 15, maybe 20 metres of road with no footpath, and you would have to get across onto the other side of the road to meet up with the nearest footpath in the village. So then just looking back across the junction, north, again, looking north, just to give you an idea of sort of nature of the traffic and the junction arrangement. Again, looking across the field entrances where my car is parked, just up there, and then the new house. And then looking in here, so this is just in the parking area on the opposite side of the road, looking north. There's the wall where the footpath would end. And then I suppose this is the nearest bit. It's not pavement, it's sort of a fill-in area. This is where people would have to get to from that point over there to start to meet up with the footpath. Sorry, which is just behind me where I'm taking this photograph. So there's quite a distance, although if there aren't cars parked in this area like that little silver car, then you would be able to walk in there. But I just use this to illustrate the gap between where the footpath could get you to and where you would then pick up the existing footpath. So in terms of the issues before us, what our concern here is, whilst at the outside but well related to the settlement boundary of a Tier 4 settlement, we would support self-build. We're not in dispute with the applicant that they would meet the requirements of being self-builders with the local connection. But what we're saying here is because it's leapfrogged beyond the built-up area, there is no further built-up area beyond it. So although the distance issue on its own is not crucial, it is how far do you keep extending and extending beyond that before you become extending unacceptably into the countryside. So I think our view on this one is there has to be an end to how far beyond the edge of the northern edge of Oadby you can go for it still to be well related, because there is a gap behind this, will be left behind this between the approved house and this site. We feel this takes this beyond the logical edge and to the extent where we are no longer well related to the settlement boundary. So that's the headline reason for refusal in terms of the matter of principle. In terms of the highways issues, highways officer has concerns about the point of access immediately onto the A361, right, more or less opposite the Aller Road. The junction there is known to be difficult. There has been accidents there in the past. And that is the concern that we're introducing turning vehicles, particularly someone who's heading south wants to turn right into the site. That is a particularly difficult manoeuvre with vehicles coming from various directions with the existing junction arrangement. And then discrete, separate to that, is the lack of safe pedestrian links to the village. The footpath is welcome. We don't deny that, but it doesn't do enough in terms of linking up with the existing footpath network within the village. So those second two highways reasons, in addition to the matter of principle, are set out before you as the three reasons for refusal in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Noon. We have three speakers on this application. The first one is Anthony Betty, supporting. You know the routine.
Madam Chairman and members, thank you for allowing me to speak today in favour of this application. Both Mr. Notaro and Mrs. Pavey are both local residents in Overy and are fully involved in village life, regularly taking part in our community events and gifting their land here for a car park for various events, big events we have in the village. This application supports policy CO1, T4 and D9, as there is a pattern of growth along this side of the road, with the neighbouring field recently being granted planning permission for a self-build. So these houses will be integrated with the building line. As Mr. Noon said, there is going to be a small gap, but this will not be seen from the roadside due to the established hedgerow already along there. Policy D19 is met on this application as dwellings won't be seen from the neighbours or from the road, as I said, due to the established hedgerow. Policy D14 is also met as there is now to be a safe route of access for pedestrians, people with disabilities and cyclists. This proposed footpath will not just help the occupants of these houses, but also Newin Farm, Lowermore Farm, and there's some other houses further up, one on the crossroads, on the T-junction and further up, where they regularly walk down with school children and they walk along on that verge. So they do cross the road there. A lot of them go into the Garfield house, pulling, as you can see there, and it's pretty much straight across there to the other pull-in area. So yeah, today I request that we do use common sense and approve this application to keep two well-integrated families in the village that support the village life, and hope you can approve it today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Betty. I'd like to call next Andrew Tizard on behalf of Overy Parish Council, please. Just let me know when you're ready and we'll start the three.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for giving the opportunity to speak this afternoon. Overy Parish Council considered the updated plans last evening at length and renewed their unanimous support for this planning application for the following reasons. The Parish Council recognised the location of the development has caused discussion. However, Overy is a village which is substantially laid out along a 1 kilometre southwest to northeast stretch of the A361, which is something we cannot change. And this proposal forms a natural extension of the village on the north side of the A361. There are lots of properties to the south and do extend further north. We do not feel this proposal sets out any precedent in location. As stated, there are several properties already within close proximity, including Oliver's Cottage, Lowmore Farm, Newin Farm and Two Ways, for which we cannot identify any incident relating to vehicle or pedestrian access to or from these properties at all. The updated plans retain access via the current historic agricultural entrance. In addition, it provides a new footway on the north side of the A361 from Bedwell Lane to the proposed property's frontage. We believe this provides an important addition to the village footways and provides additional safety for pedestrians for properties to the south of the A361, which I've already mentioned. But the village does not have contiguous footways. If you go through Overy, none of our footways connect up. We've always got diagonal crossing points. It is difficult, we accept. but not impossible. We live there. Whilst the parish council accept that the A361 can be busy, this varies enormously depending on the time of day. We believe the independent traffic report submitted with the application is realistic. For the reasons stated above, we believe the updated plans conform with the requirements of policy D14. It has been noted that the development is outside the scope of the village envelope. Whilst we acknowledge this fact, the parish council are mindful that the layout of the village along the A361 and bordered by moors to the north and south provides a limited opportunity for development within the envelope where suitable development land is all but exhausted. The village extends further to the north and south side of the A361 beyond the proposed development. We feel that this is well related to the village settlement boundaries and a linear layout. The development will allow 2 village families, one with over 30 years residency, to remain within the village, whilst freeing up 2 family-sized properties for additional occupancy. Additional vehicle access is now via entrance in Bedwell Lane, which is residential, and we feel is further support for this application. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this afternoon in support of this. We hope you will support in turn.
Thank you, Mr. Titars. But call Paul Lillicrop, please, agent for the application.
Good afternoon. This application is an opportunity for 2 Osery families who have embraced the positive nature of the self-build policy to remain in their community and contribute to the sustainability of village life. Officers have reported 3 areas of concern. Firstly, they consider the site is not well related to the village. Interesting considering the comments made about the Mark application just now. My client's site is less than 150 metres from the settlement. When leaving Osery along the A361, the housing to the east extends right up to the northern boundary of the application site. Furthermore, the self-built dwelling is nearing completion adjacent to my client's site. It is clearly evident that the proposed dwellings will be very well related to the settlement. Secondly, a lack of safe pedestrian access to the village. The site plan indicates a new footpath across the frontage of the site, extending across the frontage of the adjacent new dwelling all the way to Bedwell Lane. This is all on highway land and requires no third parties involved. This path will also benefit the occupants of existing dwellings opposite my client's site. This is a safety improvement. Thirdly, highway safety. The site will use the existing agricultural access, which is well set back from the highway. There is an alternative agricultural access to the retained fields along Bedwell Lane, and the existing access will only be used by the new dwellings. Paul Lacey, a highway consultant, was engaged to assess County Highways objections. His qualified report does not appear to have been duly considered or reported to members. His report states that the intensification of the use of this access will be relatively minor. The proposed 60-metre visibility is in excess of the required 43 for this access. With respect to officers, their report about accidents is not correct. Paul Lacey's data research shows that there has only been 1 minor injury accident at the junction of the A361 and 372 in the past 5 years, and it was reported to be due to highway hedgerows not being maintained. Following his detailed analysis, the evidence confirms that the new entrance will not be prejudicial to highway safety. To conclude, the application meets the criteria of the self-build policy. The site is well related to the settlement of Osery and will not prejudice highway safety. The proposed footpath will improve pedestrian safety for all. My clients ask that members look positively at this opportunity for them to build their home in their community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lillicrop. Members, Councillor Slocum.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I completely understand why the officers gave the recommendation they did, but I would like to say that I believe Osery Parish Council are the people that know the area. They know absolutely the ins and outs. They live there. So out of respect, I feel I would like to propose that we recommend this, we approve we approve this application on the grounds of D14 on the safety, and managing transport. I think D9 is promoting the self-build, which is what we want to do. D25 is protecting the residential amenity. That's something vitally important. And CO1 is growth to the village, protecting people that have lived in the village all their lives and still want to stay there. So I believe that we should overturn this. Apologies to the officers, but I really believe that this is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Slocum. Councillor Filmer, you've registered to speak, but I'm just looking for a seconder for councillor Slocum's proposal. Councillor Filmer.
Yeah, I'll second it as well. Again, I understand where the officers come from in the recommendation, but I think we have heard from the applicants and the local community their views. I think this does, as the report says, it meets the self-build criteria. In terms of the well-related, I'm sure the officers aren't surprised to hear that I think is well-related in relation to this. I mean, if you look at even the plan we've got there is a small single plot between the one that's got permission. Beyond that, there are dwellings on both sides of the road, and opposite there are dwellings as well, the farms that are in existence. So I think that this is well related to the site, to the community in the village. In terms of the footway, I think that is a major enhancement to that area. I understand the comment that it doesn't meet up with pavements, but those of us who live in rural villages, the pavement don't always meet up because you can't physically always get pavements in where they're required. So you do need to make the best you can, and where you get the opportunity to introduce a pavement, let's take that. That in itself will also have an impact on visibility when people are coming out of the site. If you've got a pavement, then you've got visibility on either side. And as the agent, I think, said, even as it is now, the distance of visibility meets the criteria in terms of the road. So again, in terms of highway safety, I don't see there's an issue with that. It is using existing access, and we've heard that the agricultural use of that will terminate and be used elsewhere. So based on the fact that there is the local support from those who know the area, know that highway, I'm happy to go with a seconding, obviously with conditions to be agreed with chairman and vice chairman, because there will be a need to make sure there are appropriate conditions that are put on. But in terms of this one, I having, as I say, understand why the recommendation is there, but on this occasion, I think on balance, I would go with councillor Slocum and go for approval.
Thank you. I've got three speakers: councillor Bolt, councillor Martin, and councillor Hendry.
Thank you. Just going back to the officer's recommendations, totally understand them. It's a 30-mile-an-hour area. There's other houses there that have right turns into them from the 30 area that are in the adjacent immediate area of that entrance. There's also those houses who are actually having to use the footway, the roadway, because there is no footpath at the moment. And those are the reasons that I'm looking at and thinking, in actual fact, I don't see any problem. I think it's well related. And I can only agree with what's being proposed.
Thank you, councillor Bolt. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Well, happily, most of what I wanted to say has already been said by my colleagues. But I would use this opportunity to highlight an interest in the comments made by the highways. Again, with apologies to my colleagues to my right that have put all the work in on this application. I'm afraid I too disagree with them. Highways can have it one of two ways. They can see that the road is okay for a planning application, or they can agree with me that the road might need a bit of work. They can't have it both ways. I think this development is a good use of that land. I also agree that the pavements might need a bit of work. Maybe they could work with me on that, but I agree with my colleagues over there that this is a sound application.
Thank you. Councillor Paul. Oh, sorry, councillor Hendry.
I don't even look like him. I would just like to give a case in point here. A few months ago, we went on a site visit. Councillor Filmer was there and Councillor Sloan. Okay, we went on a site visit. I think you know which one I'm talking about. And without getting all technical for you, when you come out of the actual site entrance, the proposed site entrance, to your right, about 25 metres, was a blind summit on the road. You know what I'm talking about? As you come out and you go up, you couldn't see it, and it was pointed out by Councillor Filmer when we were there on the site. So you have a blind summit, nobody can see over it. So if you're coming off the site and driving over it, you've got a problem straight away. Any traffic coming the other way couldn't see the site entrance because I couldn't walk in. What was proposed as well was, as you come off the site to turn right back towards the village, was to do a pavement, to pull the hedgerow back, and we're going to do a pavement there. All good and well, great theory. When you got to the corner of the field at the end, where there's a tractor entrance, the pavement stopped, absolutely stopped dead, and there was nothing to go on past it. The point I'm bringing this up is the probability, had that come back before us a second time, because we had it once, had it come back before us a second time, my best guess is that we granted permission because they wanted to build a so-called pavement. The highways had accepted that the blind summit has been acceptable. So in the balance of probabilities, it would have gone through and been accepted. This here today is a lot easier to be accepted because it's dead flat. There's no big rush of cars off a housing estate. It's just one, is it one dwelling? One, okay, two dwellings, but there's no rush of cars like on the estate of Wedmore. I think it was about between 30 and 35 houses, something like that. So if you compare the two, this is a doddle. For me, there's no context. I would just say grant permission. There's no big problem at all, as explained by the people. Because if you can do it to Wedmore, and they had a difficult situation, then this is an easy one. So I go along with the grant permission without any shadow of a doubt at all. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, each application is always taken on its own merits, just a reminder, but thank you. Councillor Holt, you didn't want to speak. Sorry. It's a long afternoon, sorry. Thank you. So, officers, did you wish to come back on anything that's been said this afternoon?
Yes, but obviously, sorry. Obviously, where members are minded to overturn officer recommendation, you should be sort of looking to state clearly your reasons for doing so, which I would suggest are probably the opposite of the conditions set out, namely that I think you're probably from hearing what Councillor Filmer said, that given the approved house to the south and properties opposite, is considered that the site is well related to the settlement boundary as required by policy D4, and that the applicant meets the local requirements of policy D9, which need to be read together to accept the principle. So I think members are minded to accept that point, and that notwithstanding the comments of the highway officer, the access is considered appropriate to safely accommodate the likely traffic movements generated by two dwellings, and that the provision of the proposed footpath would facilitate safe access to the village as required, and then no conflict there with policy D14. I think that is, without wanting to put words in people's mouths, that seems to be reflecting the mood around the table. I would just, if members are minded to adopt a current resolution, we should just mention the conditions. I think we need the standard outline conditions to get the outstanding reserve matters submitted within the appropriate time. We'll need to list the plans, noting very much that the layout here is indicative without being binding on us, because layout will come in due course, but it may look like quite a lot like that. I would suggest third condition to require that footpath prior to occupation, to ensure we get that. Fourthly, we will need to condition the provision of that access. I would suggest we defer to the highways officer to say, what conditions do you want on that? Fifthly, we would need a condition to limit the occupation to self-builders, as required by policies T4 and D9. And finally, I would suggest that we require biodiversity enhancements. I would like to draft that so that the reserve matters include those biodiversity, just to avoid having to unnecessarily discharge a condition at a later date, but we'll see those in the design of the house. Dean, anything I think I might have missed?
Yeah.
Bees, birds, bats, yeah. Any other from around the table?
Well, I think the Mr. Mooney just said exactly what I'd said previously, but just different. But that's all. But I had left off the diversity, so apologies. I would need to put that in. But I think that I think basically, Mr. Mooney, you're agreeing with me. So very happy to agree with that, and with obviously with the chair and vice chair to obviously approve that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bolt.
Just to clarify, with regards to the footpath, is that on the recommendation going to be formed and the entranceway formed prior to the start of the building?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're suggesting. I just mindful of other issues that I'm just quickly scanning the council key comments. Ecology do trouble me a little, but I think, well, members need to just be aware of this. The site is 530 metres west of the King's Sedgemoor Triple SI, which forms part of the Somerset Levels and Moors special protection area designated for grazing marshlands and associated ditches. The site falls within the Triple SI impact risk zone. I think what they're saying is they would want Natural England comments. Now, I would suggest, just on a precautionary basis, subject this, we do need to just check with, as we've been advised to seek the views of Natural England, if we are minded to approve this, which of course the officer's recommendation wasn't. I think on a precautionary basis, we would need to check those comments. If they raise anything new and relevant, we might need to report that back to you, the members. I don't think they will, but I would want to flag that because it is ecological advice. Yeah, members may feel that they're being overly precious, but it is. I just flagged that up because that was in my mind, bearing in mind that we might be looking at an overturn today. Specifically, we have been told specifically to seek Natural England's advice. I'm sure with the appropriate ecological conditions, that will be okay.
So Chair, just to recap, the resolution will be subject to any comments from Natural England to provide delegated authority to grant, subject to the conditions to be agreed between the service manager, chair and vice chair.
Thank you, Ms. Lehman. Councillor Stoke and Councillor, are you happy with this?
Yeah, very okay.
Okay, so we have a recommendation here to grant permission subject to the comments being made by the legal officer and listed with the planning officers. All those in favour, please show. I think that is unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of the meeting. So thank you everybody for attending and contributing. We now declare the meeting closed. Thank you.